Welcome to Paladin Financial Talk. I am your advisor host today, Ellie Robison, and I have the beautiful co-host with us, Tony Shore. Hi, Tony.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on your show today, Ellie. I love
Of
being
course.
on Paladin Financial Talk
I
each
love
week.
chatting with you.
It's been a while
I
since you've
know.
hosted an
I know.
episode, to be honest.
Yeah.
Nikki kind of took over.
She did take over.
Yeah.
Last month was all about entrepreneurship and small business building, and she loves that stuff. So she took it and ran with it.
Yeah. And everybody's fine.
Yeah, we're like, okay, okay, Nikki, you do your thing.
I know, because I know that Nikki and Jeff and you all put in a lot of work preparing for the show.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And you guys are busy, so you probably were happy to let Nikki take a few.
Yes.
But I do miss, I miss Jeff. He's so busy, Jeff Foley. I miss him.
I know. Well, they're out on spring break this week. I feel like everyone's out on spring break this week.
Yeah.
The whole building is empty, it seems like.
It is.
And so the Foleys were out in San Diego and LA. They took the kids to Disneyland.
Fun.
Yeah. I'm like a little jealous. I'm like, okay. Well, when can I be a Foley family member?
I lived in Southern California. I lived in Orange County.
You did? Oh, I knew this.
I went to Disneyland a few times when I lived out there. That was back in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
So that's
What
been a couple of days.
What a time.
Yeah. What a great time to be alive and single in Southern California. That was fun.
Well, my parents live in San Diego. Did you know that?
Yeah, that's right.
Yep,
they do.
Yep.
Yeah.
And my little sister, they're all out there. So I go maybe 2-3 times a year. Quick little trips to visit the family. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I like that whole area between Orange County and San Diego,
Yeah.
Oceanside. I love that
too.
whole area.
I do
Yeah.
too. The weather's usually
Yeah.
great.
Well, we have a big topic, so we should
Yeah.
probably get to it.
Yeah.
What are we talking about today?
Well, we're going to talk about financial literacy and resources for women in ode to this month being Women's History Month. So Nikki kicked us off last week with
She did.
And she was excited about it. And she brought on Katie, who is a new member of Paladin. And so they had chatted a little bit about that.
Yeah,
and
that was fun.
I'm going to just expand on the conversation today. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you always bring some great information. Like, you like to deal in specific facts and hopefully helpful information.
I'm very detail oriented. So
yeah, that's
thank you,
good.
Tony, for noticing.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
One thing that I was trying to rack my brain in when it comes to financial literacy, when it comes to women specifically, as an advisor, there's not going to be a difference in what I recommend for people or for women specific when investing in stocks or whatnot. Like, I'm not going to say, oh, as a woman, you should be investing in Apple. Like, that's not what is part of the conversation when it comes to genders. One topic of conversation when it comes to the differences in genders is women. There's actually a couple things. It comes to financial planning more so. It's not an investing thing. It's a financial planning thing, because as you had discussed last week, Nikki said that women earn 82 cents on the dollar for men. Statistically, women also outlive their counterparts. So those are two components to financial planning. But I think a huge one that is lost in the conversation is women in their mid-careers, where they're just starting to become moms, and there's a conflict of, do they want to be stay-at-home moms, or do they want to be working moms making $200,000 but also, running around like a chicken with their head cut off, and possibly outsourcing, people to help clean their homes and nannying, and that's a huge cost and a huge toll.
Huge.
And oftentimes, a lot of couples are weighing, well, if all of our money is going to paying for the kids' caretaking, it might not matter on the woman working or not,
Sure.
So that's a huge topic of conversation. But one thing to take into consideration as an advisor is, I'm looking at the logical perspective of it. Yes, you might be losing a paycheck and trying to save money on not paying for a nanny if you were a stay-at-home mom, but there's a huge opportunity lost in your retirement savings long term. We're thinking like 20, 30 years down the road.
Yeah, that's how most people are investing, is through their company's retirement plans, 401ks, 403bs, IRAs.
And so if you take 10 years off of work, that might be 10 years of your highest earning years within your career. There could be a huge loss of Social Security benefits for yourself down the road. There could be a huge loss of an employer match, like you just kind of mentioned, is if your employer is matching 5% over 10 years, and if you're maxing out your 401k, how much money are you losing there? And so it's really weighing the pros and cons of, does it make financial sense for your retirement? But even so, like as an advisor, I'm trying to look at it from a logical perspective. It still kind of comes down to what the couple feels internally about their priorities. Like the right here, right now, some people care more about living in the present and they don't want to be worrying about 40 years down the road. And so there's a little bit of marriage between the logic that an advisor brings to the table and then making sure that your feelings are married into what we're suggesting. Essentially.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
it really does. And it really does illustrate the point where it is different for women than men in many cases. Not in all, but in many cases. I mean, from the 82 cents on a dollar, that difference, just the pay gap, which has come a long way, but still we're not there.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
that's not good. And it's crazy in this day and age. Yeah.
And even now that I'm thinking about like the Social Security benefit little nugget that I had given there, yes, you might be subject to spousal benefits. You know, if you don't work and you have a lower benefit down the road, you might get half of your spouse's primary insurance amount when you're in retirement. But if you continue to work, what if you exceed his benefit? Then you might be yielding in $60,000 a year of Social Security in your retirement. That's just giving you an extra stream of income that you wouldn't have gotten if you didn't keep working, essentially.
Sure.
So
Social Security can be affected, and that's a huge part of it. So all these things go into the plan, but sometimes investing it's necessary for it to be different for women.
Yeah.
And so you have to take these things into consideration.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah. One thing too is like I was mentioning, you want to marry the logic side of things with what you prioritize as a couple and what you value. And so identifying those values, I think, is important for the client to do on their own. There's only so much we can do as an advisor on trying to identify your own values. You got to figure that out on your own. So one thing that I wanted to bring to the table were resources on how to educate yourself on the personal finance side. There's only so much I can suggest with budgeting and figuring out your priorities. Like you got to do that on your own. And so I wanted
you do need to do it.
You do need to do it. Yeah, absolutely. Because that's almost the foundation that you need to bring to the table in order for us to build out your financial plan long term.
Yeah. When my wife and I budget, it makes a world of difference. And we try to do it once a month, beginning every month, and then plan out the next month.
Okay,
right.
Good. Yeah.
And if we skip or miss and, or try to put it off, always those are the months we have the issues.
Yeah.
If we know what you're spending and what you need and where it's coming from and where it's going, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Absolutely. So a couple books that will align with the psychology of money is literally the book called The Psychology of Money. It's Timeless Lessons of Wealth, Greed, and Happiness. This is by the author of Morgan Housel. He's pretty well known within the financial services industry. And the little synopsis that the book gives you is this is what it says. So money is typically taught as a math-based field where data and formulas tell us exactly what to do. But in the real world, people don't make financial decisions on a spreadsheet, and they make them at the dinner table or in a meeting room where personal history or their own unique view of the world, ego, pride, marketing, and odd incentives are scrambled together. So that's exactly what I was trying to say earlier, where it's like you're marrying the logic of things with the feelings that you have.
Emotions play a big role in how people deal with their money and the decisions they make about finances. And that's where people get into trouble. That can be costly, letting your emotions dictate how you invest, right?
If you let your emotions dictate what you are trying to do with your money, that's where you're going to run into major mistakes and opportunity costs and just a loss of money over time.
Sure.
So, but identifying the priorities of your money as well. So there's a book out there. It's called I Will Teach You to Be Rich. The author is Ramit, I think is how you pronounce it. He's Indian. I don't really know how to pronounce his name, but he is really good about talking about mindful spending. So for example, if you are spending a lot out at restaurants but you don't really care about nice food, while on the other hand, you know that you absolutely hate doing the laundry, maybe it makes more sense to cut back on the spending of restaurants and eating out and go outsource and get your laundry done by someone professionally. Like, identifying those values of where you might save time and energy and mental energy that's going to be a huge factor into your budget at the end of the day.
So change your goals, or
identifying like what you care about most, and put your dollar there and like give you happiness too at the end of the day. Like that's what your money is for, is giving you happiness.
Yeah. And I think looking at where you're spending your money, you find, hey, I don't really use that or need that.
Exactly.
And then you're always say, hey, I wish we had money to do this. Well, that's a great way to look at it.
So I really like that.
Yeah.
Also, Spotify Premium just added audiobooks.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I haven't even dug into it yet, but it is so easy to just listen to audiobooks. I was doing that for a while when I was training for a half marathon. I was getting bored of music and listen to books, or even driving in the car. Nikki was talking about that last week, and she's like, I get 30 minutes a day in the car driving to the gym and back. Use that time to absorb new knowledge that is handed out to you, essentially.
Yeah, there are really good podcasts like this one, like yours, Ellie, the Paladin podcast, and then there are really good audiobooks. I'm a huge audiobook addict.
Are you?
I listen to a lot of fiction, like mysteries I like, and thrillers, but I listen to audiobooks. I go through a lot of audiobooks.
Okay. Yeah. You need a little escape from all the financial talk during the day.
Yeah, exactly. I like to listen to somebody else do the talking. Although I did just finish an audiobook. Voicing an audiobook, and that's a lot of work.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you enjoy the experience though?
Yeah, I enjoy it, but the work, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I mean, to get it to sound like I want it to sound, there's a lot of work that goes into it. The editing, I mean, it's hours. Audiobooks are hours long.
Speaking of podcasts, I tried to do some digging, and there's not that many like women-based podcasts that speak on financial literacy. There's a few out there. Yes, there is, like Her First 100K. However, I want to cautious people that a lot of people who are out there just rambling out into the internet aren't licensed professionals.
Yeah, that's dangerous.
Be mindful of that. Yeah. They're called financial influencers, or finfluencers, I think is what the term is. And so that's another thing as you try to explore podcasts and resources on your own, is if there is a professional, if they're a true licensed professional behind the camera or the microphone or whatnot, you can always check them on BrokerCheck and check their licensing and see how they're licensed. So I would advise people to do that as well. It's understand who you're getting your financial literacy from.
Right, because Paladin Financial is held to a standard. You have licenses as advisors, and you're held to standards, and you're audited. And so it's important to work with a trusted financial professional who's also a fiduciary. I'm always shocked at how many people out there call themselves financial planners, but they just sell insurance, or they just are a stockbroker. They're not actually a financial planner or advisor. They, a lot of them shouldn't be giving you advice on cash value life insurance or stock investments. And so you have to be careful, and especially in the world of podcasts, because like there are finfluencers. Finfluencers.
I know, right? It's a weird funny.
Finfluencers. And I know that one of my kids told me they've been learning about investing from a regular TikTok person on TikTok.
There's a lot of them.
I'm like, you're learning about finances from TikTok. Now that can be a good thing, or it could be a horrible mistake.
Exactly. No, exactly. And so like there are some people out there who know what they're talking about, but as a fiduciary, you're right. Like we are highly regulated. So it is really hard to find the like highest level of designated people out there giving you appropriate advice. And like you should never be receiving blanket advice from the internet. And so
like general, that's very general. So you want people, and that's why you on the show and Jeff and Nikki, you always say, hey, everybody's situation is different.
Yes.
That's why we need to talk to you about your own personal situation. because you don't want to go with rules of thumb or general advice that worked for your neighbor or your buddy at work or some TikTok person who had luck with something. Now they feel they can tell everybody about it and everyone should do it. And by the time it hits that point where they tell you that everyone should do this, it's probably too late to benefit from it.
That's the perfect way of putting it. Yes, absolutely.
Right?
Yes. One thing that I do like researching, or I guess looking out there, is it's documentaries. There's really good documentaries out there that give you transparency on financial services, and it's not necessarily recommendations, but like I had said, giving yourself a base level of knowledge of how money works. I really like Money Explained on Netflix. It's just a short series.
I've heard of it. Yes. I've never watched it.
And yet I would recommend checking it out, because there's an episode on like scam artists out there. There's an episode on student loans, and these are basic concepts that you should be able to like educate yourself on. Yeah. So when you do come to an advisor, you have that starting point. You're like, okay, I know a little bit about my money and
that's good.
What I'm doing with it. Yeah. A couple other, now that I'm on the like documentary, like TV mode right now, I'm thinking of other things. I know Dirty Money is another documentary. It might be a movie, a short movie on Netflix. I watched it when it first came out. It's just it's a show. It's talking about how corporations, how they're ripping you off essentially, and the behind the scenes of what they might be doing with your money when you go buy something.
Sure.
So that's out there. I think that was highly educational.
Yeah.
Even some of the spin-off movies like Dumb Money. Have you heard of that one that came out last year? Yep. Yeah. And so they evolved it a little bit to give it a fun storyline, but it was the concepts behind the GameStop stock that
where they shorted stocks.
Yes, where the Reddit user back in 2020, maybe 2021, inflated that stock, and it was just from normal people on the internet, and they kind of screwed Wall Street over. And so that was an accurate representation of how trading, like, anyone can do it essentially. Doesn't mean that it's a good thing for you to be playing around with, but I think it gives some level of transparency into like what you can do with your money.
Yeah.
Kind of, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really stuck it to the people who are out there on Wall Street trying to short stocks on failing companies.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just saying like there's a whole world out there.
Oh, right.
Yes. Yeah. I'm looking at my list. Bernie Madoff 2 was a Netflix documentary series showing the transparency of Ponzi schemes. Those are still around today. We've come across a couple clients who have been just, how do I word it? People who have been
victimized.
That's the word.
Of...
There we go. Of a Ponzi scheme, which, it's so hard to even know what's happening when you're going through it, and then they have to just deal with the repercussions afterwards. And we've helped a couple people navigate that after the fact scenario, and so that's out there.
I think that one of the largest Ponzi schemes was actually not the largest, was right here in Minnesota. The guy who ran Fingerhut, the cattle. There used to be a cattle.
I don't know
company.
This one. Okay.
Tom Peterson.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Tom Peterson, who's in prison, who got put in prison because I think it was billions, or a billion.
There's a lot of money that's usually associated in Ponzi schemes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's resources out there too.
Yeah, he was laundering money through car washes. He owned a couple of car washes, and through the Fingerhut, and they bought out Polaroids. So they had all these Polaroid VCRs and stuff, and they through a record. He started a record label and laundered money through that. It was pretty crazy.
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine.
Yeah, but the top two people that were involved in it, that was a big trial. Now that's been a few years back.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
was probably decade? 15 years ago, probably.
15 years ago. Okay.
It's Pedersen or Peterson, and it was Fingerhut. He ran a Fingerhut catalog company, which at one time was the largest. Sears was the largest, but then Fingerhut was one of the largest mail order catalogs in North America.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, it was based in Minnetonka.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to watch out, and they're out there.
They're still out there. Absolutely. Yeah. So knowing and understanding where your money is going is important.
Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's too bad though. You said there isn't more specifically female oriented podcasts or documentaries for females in finance and investing.
Yeah. There is one podcast that I forgot to mention, the Wall Street Journal, Secrets of Wealthy Women.
Oh,
that was it's an old podcast. They're not releasing any new episodes anymore, but they would interview successful women on Wall Street. And so it's not giving you an insight on financial literacy for yourself. It's more so understanding the industry as a whole.
Sure.
And so one of my favorite episodes was Sally Krawcheck, she was CEO of Merrill Lynch a couple decades ago. She started her own business. She's now CEO and co-founder of Ellevest, which is a women-based investing platform. It's a robo-advisor platform though, but it helps women build confidence in understanding investments. So
sure,
I really liked that episode. And I guess there are more resources when it comes to women-led businesses and starting a business as a woman. So that's a good thing, at least. And I did some digging. There's actually a lot of government-backed grants out there that you can do your research on and get some funding if you were to start a business, or if you even have an existing business.
As a woman,
yes,
if you have a business or start a business, and I know that even on the state level and federal level, there are tax benefits for women-owned businesses too.
So the U.S. Small Business Administration, they helped partner with a nonprofit called the Association of Women's Business Centers, and there's locations all across the country. So there's one in Minneapolis and one in St. Paul. I think it's like near their downtown areas. And these type of resource centers, they'll give you a huge resource list of not financial professionals, but professionals that you might need in order to help build a business as well. So that might be legal, it might be accounting, payroll, consulting in general, depending on what you're trying to get into, and giving you outlets there. I do think another component when you're starting a business, networking is going to be huge for you. And so there's so many different kinds of networking programs that are associated, not just through the Association of the Women's Business Centers, but just like from city to city in general. I actually went to a speed networking event last month, I think it was, and it was geared towards business owners in Edina. It was so much fun. And guess what? About 75% of them are women.
Wow, that's impressive. Yeah.
And so it was a blast.
Women tend to be, it's a stereotype, but it's true. And the statistics show women tend to be more involved in those types of things. And they tend to network better. And just recently read a stat. I think we talked about it maybe even last week with Nikki. But when women do invest, more men have typically and are involved in the investing for families.
Yeah.
The husbands have usually been the investors, but when women do invest, they do better.
Yeah.
Women do better with investments than men. Women who have money in investments tend to do better. Men make more emotional decisions, surprisingly, and women are more likely to ask for advice and work with a financial professional than
Exactly
men.
right. Yeah. Exactly right. And women are a little bit more naturally conservative too. So I think that goes hand in hand with the not making any emotional decisions with your money.
Super risky.
Yes. They're like, okay,
oh, my buddy told me about this thing with Bitcoin. I'm going to try it.
GameStop.
It's like, whoa,
yeah, exactly. And so
don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that, guys. Everyone out there. So we talked about some federal based grants out there. There's resources out there through like the women's business centers, but I mean, if you aren't approved for a grant, you have to jump through hoops when it comes to grants.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So be mindful of that. That's a little bit of homework, but there's also private small business options out there. I was actually looking at nerdwallet.com. Have you heard of NerdWallet?
Oh, yeah.
I love NerdWallet. I tell a lot of my clients to check out NerdWallet because they'll give you like the most up-to-date best savings accounts based on their APY and the newest upcoming credit cards.
NerdWallet is a great resource.
So it is a great resource. And they recently, I found their small business like grants for women page. There was a huge list on there. So they have almost everything. If there's a question that you might have on resources, start with NerdWallet. So
that's a great place to start.
Mm-hmm.
Investopedia has some good articles too.
They do on understanding the terminology.
Yes, that's more about the terminology, but NerdWallet really has some great resources.
Yeah. So finding loans and grants for yourself, start there. If you are a woman trying to level up and not just start a small business, but a true startup where it might take a lot of seed money or some venture capital money, there's also women-based funding there. And so I was looking online and I found the statistic that historically less than 2% of venture capital funding has gone to female founders. And
really?
And so there's this website, flowcap.com, where it gives this huge list of female founders funding resources where you can go to. And if you are a highly ambitious woman looking to start your own tech company and need a lot of money, check it out. So I saw that Chloe Capital was a seed stage venture capital firm focused on women-led companies. There's female founder funds, which invests in female-led startups and e-commerce platforms and web-enabled services specifically. There's even a Tory Burch Foundation capital program, which provides loans for small businesses founded by women. So there's so many options out there. You just really have to do some digging. Honestly, that's what it comes down to. It's doing the digging.
Yep.
So yeah, that's a majority of what I wanted to bring to the table today. And hopefully I can provide some value to any ambitious women out there and trying to either start a business or just trying to get the foundation understanding when it comes to financial literacy and understanding the priorities that you want to make with your dollar in your household.
So. Yeah, and I think both parties, if you're a couple and one or the other shouldn't be totally in control of the finances, you should both be involved and you should work with a financial professional, somebody like yourself, Ellie. So let our listeners know if they have questions about these resources, want to talk to you about this further, or about getting a financial plan for them and their family in place, maybe looking at their retirement income plan, making sure their money is working for them. How can they get a hold of you?
Well, just give us a call. Honestly, 651-842-8406. Or if you just have any general questions or topics that you'd like to hear on the podcast, just shoot us an email at info@paladinfinancial.com. We're really excited what we're going to be bringing to the table this year. We have a client educational event here in a couple of weeks, and we're going to be talking about the 2024 stock market, economic forecast. It's an election year. Who knows what's going to happen?
That looks like a really
we're really
informative.
Excited. And so we're really excited of everything that we're trying to provide to all our clients here at Paladin. It's only getting better and better.
Yeah, it's great. You've assembled quite a team there too.
Yeah.
I mean, it is really great. It's fun doing the show with you guys each week.
Yeah.
I love it. And listeners, that does it for today's episode of Paladin Financial Talk. Thanks for tuning in.